So right now as I speak, there is much contention on whether we should share some of this so-called essential medicine to the rest of the world, or whether Americans should get a third or a fourth dose. I want to mention another much more essential medicine that a lot of Americans consume 3, 4, 5, 6 doses a day when they might only need 1 or 2. I'm talking about our calories, obviously. Now, here in the United States, the average American, I think, could lose 20 or 30 pounds, right? I was just reading an article about how bad the recessions of various other countries were, and they measured it by how much weight people lost, right? Here in the United States, it's the other way around, right? The more we go into recession, the more we can seem to afford to eat at the expense of our future, at the expense of the rest of the world, of course. And so I challenge you to rethink that, right? If we thought of our food like our medicine, we wouldn't do that, right? We would realize it's a humanitarian problem. But for some reason here in the United States, we have disconnected the idea of food and medicine, right? We eat what we want, and when those foods give us heart disease, give us cancer, they compromise our immune system, so that actually healthy foods like bat soup will make us sick because we've compromised our immune system with sugar, trans fat, chemicals, and pharmaceutical drugs. It's not our fault, right? It's just bad luck, right? We've decoupled those concepts, which doesn't make any sense at all when you zoom out at it, right? Now, if you think about how much Americans overspend on food, so I'm looking at it right here in 2019, U.S. consumers, businesses, and government entities, because the government needs to fatten themselves too, spend 1.77 trillion. I'll let you do the math there. Think about your own food budget and what percentage of it could go, right? I would imagine at least 1 trillion of that could go easily, right? I'm just comparing myself to how I used to behave with food. And I would say at least half of that food budget could go away. Now, think about how hotly it is debated about Biden's $2 trillion infrastructure bill, and yet we're not willing to save $1 trillion in order to strengthen our biggest infrastructure, right? Our human capital. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Now, here in the United States, one of the reasons we had such a big problem last year was that people couldn't afford to take time off even when they needed to, right? And so they went to the office and they spread their diseases to everybody in the office. Now, you think about how much time you spend on eating, right? Stop and think about it. Well, it's not just the time you spend actually shoveling food into your mouth. You got to prepare that food. You got to clean up. You might have to commute somewhere to have that food. You might have to shop for it. I actually did a thought experiment one time about what would happen if I stopped needing to eat, and I could save for myself, I would save 4 to 5 hours easily. Not to mention the time it takes to earn all that money to buy the food, right? It's probably more like 6 or 7 hours a day if you add that too, right? And we could get more work done, and then we could have more time off, and then people who need to quarantine can go home and quarantine, right? Not to mention, a lot of Americans really could use some extra vacation time as well, right? So I want you to think about it. Do you really need that third dose?